Hare Krishna, Namaste. The question is, what is subtle atyahara? Why it is important to recognize and avoid in our devotional practice. For those who may not know, this is one of the book that was translated by Srila Prabhupada. This book was written by Srila Rupa Goswami in 15th century, and the name of the book is Sri Upadeshamrita. This particular term, atyahara, comes in the second sloka of this book. Before I answer the question, I like to read few passages from the preface of this book, Sri Upadeshamrita. It is very informative, instructive, and relevant to this question. Let me read a couple of paragraphs. In all spiritual affairs, one's first duty is to control his mind and senses. Unless one controls his mind and senses, one cannot make any advancement in spiritual life. Everyone within this material world is engrossed in the modes of passion and ignorance. One must promote himself to the platform of goodness, Sattva Guna, by following the instructions of Rupa Goswami. And then everything concerning how to make further progress will be revealed. In the next paragraph, Prabhupada uses often the term Goswami. It has nothing to do with the caste Goswami. Keeping that in mind, let's read this paragraph. Advancement in Krishna consciousness depends on the attitude of the follower. A follower of the Krishna consciousness movement should become a perfect Goswami. Vaishnavas are generally known as Goswamis. In Vrindavana, this is the title by which the director of each temple is known. One who wants to become a perfect devotee of Krishna must become a Goswami. Go means the senses, and Swami means the master. Unless one controls his senses and mind, one cannot become a Goswami. To achieve the highest success in life by becoming a Goswami and then a pure devotee of the Lord, one must follow the instructions known as Upadeshamrita, which have been given by Srila Rupa Goswami. Srila Rupa Goswami has given many other books such as Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Vidaha Madhava, and Lalita Madhava, but Upadeshamrita constitutes the first instructions for neophyte devotees. One should follow these instructions very strictly. Then it will be easier to make one's life successful. It will be easier to make one's life successful. Hare Krishna. And this is signed by Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Now, let's get to the question. What is subtle atyahara and why it is important to recognize and avoid in our devotional practice? The answer are present in the book called Sri Bhaktyaloka by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who gave his commentary on these verses that present in Sri Upadeshamrita. Atyaharas prayasascha prajalpaha niyamagraha janasangascha laulyamcha sadbhir bhaktir vinasyati. Here Rupa Goswami says there are 6 items that destroys one bhakti, one devotion. Number 1, atyahara, eating more than necessary or collecting more funds than required. Number 2, prayasas, over endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain. Number 3, prajalpaha, talking unnecessary things, talking unwanted things about mundane subject matters. Niyamagraha, that's 4th, practicing the scriptural rules and regulation only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. Number 5. Janasangaha, associating with worldly minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. And lastly, number 6, Laulyam, being greedy for mundane achievements. Each one of these are really very important to know and consciously avoid them. But let's focus on the question based on the first item, which is atyahara. Ahara means eating or collecting. Ati means overly or much, more. Therefore, when you combine atyahara, which means overeating or over collecting, but that is just an external meaning of this term. There is a deeper subtle meaning to this, and that is what the question is also. The principal meaning of ahara is eating, that is bhojana, to eat. When we say eating, we always connect that with our tongue and mouth and belly, because everything goes through our mouth. We taste it through our tongue and our belly get filled and we get satisfied. But lest we notice, not only the tongue but all the other senses, 4 senses, also constantly having bhojana, eating. They eat. The eyes are eating by seeing the external objects. Some objects seen are tastier, which he like to continue to overeat through his eyes. Our ears are also eating by receiving the sound vibrations that's happen outside. Some sounds are tastier, especially when it comes to the self-glorification, when others glorifies how great we are, or when we hear glorification of our own family member from others, we enjoy eating that through our ears. Likewise, the nose is also having bhojana by smelling. And our touch sense is also having bhojana by feeling the cool breeze and touch of someone. So it is not only the atyahara is not only connected to the tongue or filling our belly, but it applicable to all other 4 senses as well. It is definitely important to feed these senses, but what we feed is very important. How much we feed is also very, very important. Anything that we do with these senses must be very balanced. If it is not balanced, then there's a problem. And that is the second part of the question, why it is important to recognize these subtle atyahara. If our senses are busy in these enjoyment of collecting various sense objects through these senses, then one's qualification as a human is totally lost, and is not better than any other lower species. As a practicing devotees, we must be vigilant to notice where our senses are trying to run. What is it trying to chase to have its next meal? If the meal is unhealthy, we advise our senses from not eating them. Many saints have repeatedly said that the only healthy food for these senses is to have the Lord's beauty as the meal for the eyes, Lord's pastime as the meal for our ears, Lord's prasadam as the meal for our tongue, Lord's tulasi mala as the meal for our nose, and serving the Lord's lotus feet as the meal for our touch, our skin. This is considered the healthy meal, and very interestingly, this is the only meal that we can overeat, which will not create any uncomfortable, uneasy situation to us. Whereas any other material thing that we try to overeat overfeed our senses is going to be draining us and keep us safely in this material world and make us go through the repeated birth and death. So the meal, the food that we are eating is determined whether healthy or unhealthy based on how it's going to be benefiting our Atma, the soul. How is it going to benefit in our bhakti, in our practice in Krishna consciousness? Therefore, it is a must every single devotee recognize this subtle level atyahara. And this is what Srila Prabhupada also mentioned clearly in his preface on this book, Sri Upadeshamrita. Having control of one's senses is an key element for one's spiritual progress. If these senses are dosed with sense enjoyment, where will we get time to think about Krishna? Because we constantly practice our senses to enjoy these material objects. So what is needed, that much we give to these senses and keep the senses under our control, not we become under the control of senses. Otherwise, fully engage these senses in the service of the Lord. To conclude, enjoying tendency is the nature of the Atma. Either it wants to enjoy the worldly things, or it wants to enjoy itself, the Atma itself, or it wants to enjoy the Lord in His service. So as individuals, we need to decide what type of enjoyment are we looking for. If it is worldly enjoyment, we will stay in this world. If we want to enjoy our own self, then we may transcend this material world and continue to enjoy just our own self. If we want to enjoy the Supreme Lord by serving Him, then we will attain the Supreme Lord. The enjoyment is always blissful when two parties or two persons are involved. And the highest enjoyment that one can get is when Atma and Paramatma connect and the Jivatma fully engage in the service of the Lord. This is all happens with the simple, basic foundation or principle that's given in Sri Upadeshamrita. And the very first thing that Rupa Goswami mentions here is atyahara. If it is not noticed, if it is not addressed, if it is not taken care, it may spoil the bhakti plant. So, atyahara not only eating, it includes of other activities as well. And it is important because otherwise it will spoil our growth in Krishna consciousness. Thank you. Hare Krishna.